At 600 hours, on the morning of March 23, 1943, Major General Terry de la Mesa Allen stood at a forward command post, 3 miles west of Elgatar, Tunisia, his eyes fixed on 50 German tanks emerging from a mountain pass. Through field glasses, the morning air carried a crisp chill. The sky stretched clear above, visibility flawless. Allen observed every detail of the German column as it descended the hills into the valley below. Panzers moved in perfect formation, each tank carrying the confidence of veterans hardened by campaigns across 3 continents. Only 27 days prior, American forces had been shattered at Kasserine Pass. 6,500 men lost. Retreating 50 miles in 5 brutal days, the defeat was total, humiliating, unmistakably public. Germans mocked American soldiers as cowards. The British doubted whether Americans could fight at all. Across the Atlantic, American newspapers chronicled disaster in stark terms. The credibility of the entire U.S. war effort hung in the balance. Now, those same Americans were entrenched across Elgatar Valley, given a single, unwavering order: stop the German 10th Panzer Division. Allen had commanded the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, for 9 months. He had trained these men in camps across the United States, on transport ships crossing the Atlantic, in staging areas across Britain and North Africa. He knew their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears, and their determination. They were green, untested, unproven, yet they were Americans, and Americans did not quit. The question lingered: would anyone ever know what this division could achieve? Given proper leadership, proper doctrine, and a fair chance to fight, the German assault arrived precisely as intelligence predicted. Panzerkampfwagen, Mark IV tanks, MA tank destroyers, armored half-tracks carrying infantry, a coordinated mechanized force, the same kind that had crushed Poland in 3 weeks, France in 6. The same assault that had driven Americans back 50 miles at Kasserine Pass less than a month earlier. Confidence radiated from the German commanders. They had beaten Americans before, and they expected to do so again. What they did not know was that the army they faced at Elgatar was not the same army they had defeated before. In just 27 days, the United States Army had transformed more completely than any Allied force had in 3 years. The story began in the Atlas Mountains of Tunisia. On February 19, 1943, that morning, Field Marshal Win RML launched an offensive against American positions at Kasserine Pass, a 2-mile wide gap in the Grand Dorsal mountain chain. Strategically vital. Control of Kasserine meant controlling routes through the mountains, the gateway to North Africa. American defenders were inexperienced. Most had never fired a shot in combat. They had arrived only weeks earlier as part of Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of French North Africa. Their commander, Major General Lloyd Fredendall, positioned his forces poorly. Units were split into small, isolated groups, without mutual support. Military parlance called them penny packets. Small detachments assigned tasks, lacking coordination. American M3, Lee, and M3 Grant tanks stood tall, high silhouettes making them easy targets. Each tank mounted a 75mm gun in a side sponson, a 37mm in a turret, a design of compromise, born from urgency, not optimal engineering. Tank commanders lacked experience against German armor, trained only against other American tanks in Louisiana and the Mojave Desert. German tanks were faster, better armored, manned by seasoned crews with campaigns across Poland, France, and Russia. Infantry had dug shallow scrapes, not proper foxholes. They did not understand that German tanks would deliberately drive over weak positions, crushing soldiers beneath rotating tracks. Lessons learned in blood. When RML struck, American lines collapsed within hours. German panzers broke through the pass. Italian forces supporting the attack overran artillery positions. Fredendall's scattered units could not coordinate, could not call for artillery support. Batteries responded only to dedicated observers. Observers spread across different radio frequencies. Air support was absent. Units did not know each other's positions. Some retreated directly into territory already occupied by Germans. By the night of February 16, 1943, the Second Corps had lost 1,600 men, nearly 100 tanks, 57 half-tracks, 29 artillery pieces. Retreat continued for 5 days. RML pushed Americans back 50 miles, capturing towns of City, Bossid, Spittler, and Farana. American soldiers abandoned equipment, supplies, and positions. British forces alongside them also retreated, losing all 11 of their tanks. By February 22nd, when the German advance finally halted, American casualties totaled 6,500 men, 300 killed, 3,000 wounded, 3,000 missing. Tank losses numbered 183, more than 500 trucks and motor vehicles, 104 half-tracks, 208 artillery pieces. German casualties were 989, with 34 tanks destroyed. It was the worst defeat the United States Army had suffered in World War II. British questioned American competence. German officers openly mocked their fighting ability. Field Marshal Albert Kessler, German Mediterranean commander, reported to Hitler that Americans were poorly trained and poorly led. The disaster at Kasserine Pass created a crisis. General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander in North Africa, faced a stark question. Could American forces fight Germans on equal terms? Or would they have to rely on British support to carry the European ground war? The answer would shape Allied strategy for the entire war. Eisenhower saw something others missed. American units had fought poorly, but they had not completely broken. Some units had held ground against impossible odds. Artillery, once organized, stopped German advances with devastating accuracy. The problem was not the soldiers. The problem was leadership, doctrine, coordination, and these were problems that could be fixed. On February 26th, 2 days after RML withdrew from Kasserine, Eisenhower began the fastest military transformation in modern warfare. First step, brutal clarity. He relieved Major General Lloyd Fredendall on March 6th. Fredendall had positioned headquarters 70 miles behind the front lines, in a canyon, digging tunnels into rock, safe from air attack. Eisenhower later called it the only time he saw a high command more concerned with its own safety than battle. Omar Bradley called it an embarrassment to every American soldier. Fredendall had never reconnoitered the battlefield, did not know terrain. Divisions scattered across 50 miles of desert. When Germans attacked, coordination failed. Fredendall was replaced by Major General George Patton, 57-year-old cavalry officer, a man trained his entire life for mechanized warfare. Patton assumed command at 1000 hours, March 6, 1943. 17 days to transform the Second Corps before Eisenhower ordered them back into battle. Patton began with discipline. Every soldier ordered to wear clean, pressed uniforms, properly adorned with insignia, leggings, helmets, neckties, mandatory. Officers who failed to enforce standards were relieved of command. Patton inspected troops personally, stopped jeeps, checked uniforms, questioned soldiers about equipment. He fined officers $50 for missing neckties. Made enlisted men dig proper foxholes. He was relentless, omnipresent, demanding perfection. The Second Corps hated him. Soldiers called him a tyrant. Officers complained about his obsession with appearances. Some wondered if Patton understood they were preparing for combat, not a parade. But Patton knew what soldiers did not. An army that looked sloppy fought sloppy. A culture of excellence begins with the visible and enforceable. Uniform standards reflected discipline. Discipline reflected battlefield performance. In 17 days, scattered units became cohesive teams. Soldiers took pride in appearance and equipment, formations precise, weapons cleaned daily, vehicles maintained. Radio operators drilled communications, squad leaders rehearsed tactics, platoon leaders studied terrain, prepared defensive positions. Morale and confidence soared. Men who had fled began to believe they could advance in order. Those defeated began to believe they could win. While Patton rebuilt morale, Eisenhower rebuilt doctrine. Artillery, armor, air support, command structures, all revised. Lessons from Kasserine were absorbed. By mid-March, artillery coordination allowed massed fires. Tank doctrine shifted. Tanks supported infantry. Tank destroyers engaged German armor. Air liaison officers embedded with ground units. New procedures for calling strikes. Control of the air became mandatory. Command structure reformed. Divisions massed together. Mutual support mandatory. No unit positioned without reinforcements. March 17th, 11 days after Patton took command. 1st Infantry Division and 1st Armored Division advanced toward Gafsa, capturing it with minimal resistance. March 18th, 1st Ranger Battalion seized Elgatar. Italian defenders retreated to hills. Elgatar Pass, strategic gateway to the coastal plains. German General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim ordered the 10th Panzer Division to attack on March 22nd. At 600 hours, March 23rd, 50 German tanks emerged from the mountains. Panzercamp, Wagen. Mark leading. 75mm guns visible. Behind them, MA tank destroyers, armored half-tracks, Panzer Grenadiers advancing. The Germans expected the same easy victory as Kasserine. They were wrong. The Americans at Elgatar, disciplined, coordinated, battle-ready, awaited their advance. The stage was set for the decisive clash, a confrontation that would prove the transformation of the United States Army in just 27 days.